Recording in progress.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome all those joining us in the Commission chambers this morning, or this afternoon, excuse me. We usually have that in the morning. It is 5 o'clock. This is the December 5th, 2023 Weber County Board of Commissioners. I'm Commissioner Gage Farr. I'll be conducting the meeting this evening. With me, to my left, is Commissioner Sharon Bolos. To my right is Commissioner Jim Harvey. We're going to start this meeting this afternoon with a Pledge of Allegiance given by Commissioner Bolos.
I invite the audience to rise and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance with me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, welcome. We also have some people online, I believe. I'd like to start this meeting. I'm going to go to Chris Crockett. I believe everybody has hopefully read the agenda and the public comment sections that we're going to operate under. We're going to operate under the rules of order of this commission and also the state legislature. I wanted Chris Crockett just to take a few minutes and go through the rules of order. Then I'll talk about the public comment section. Chris?
Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming out tonight. I just wanted to quickly go over some of the rules of order from our county commission policies and our expressive activity restrictions policies. We find that when we have large groups coming out on matters that are important to the public, we find it helps with the administration and efficiency of the meeting to just go over some of these rules quickly. So I'll just read a couple of the statements, first from our expressive activity restrictions policy. The purpose of the policy is to promote and foster freedom of expression in the public space by balancing the First Amendment right to freedom of speech and assembly with the county's right and responsibility to provide services to the public and to maintain a level of decorum that is appropriate for public spaces. Expressive activity is defined, means peacefully assembling, protesting, debating, or speaking, distributing literature, carrying a sign, or signature gathering, or circulating a petition. Now, usually when we're talking about expressive activity in public forums, we talk about two most often, which are one, general public forums. Those would be on your sidewalks and on your roads, where there's little restriction of expressive activity. The one where it's actually going to be applicable tonight is referred to as a limited public forum. That is an area that has not traditionally been open for the free exercise of expressive activity, but is made available by the county for expressive activity, subject to the restrictions contained in this policy. And that includes the commission chambers. And those restrictions, which have been recognized throughout the country in the United States Supreme Court, are time, place, and manner restrictions. They're constitutional in that those time, place, and manner restrictions don't go to the subject matter or the viewpoint. That is protected by the First Amendment, but it goes to content neutral, such as limiting the number of speakers or limiting time limits so that the meeting can run orderly and efficiently. So next I'll turn to the rules of order that the commission is governed by, and I'll read a couple of sections. First one from public hearings. While the public hearing is open, the commission may ask questions of the speakers but may not deliberate or argue with the public on the matter at hand. Those speaking at a public hearing are required to follow the rules established herein for citizen comments. Upon conclusion of citizen comments, the chair shall close the public hearing. The commission may then deliberate or take action on the matter at hand upon the closing of the public hearing. Now, rules regarding citizen participation and comments. We've passed around sign-up sheets, which I have right here, for those who have indicated that they wish to speak and provide comment tonight. The chair shall recognize each person requesting to speak in turn. A person may not speak unless recognized by the chair. Upon being recognized by the chair, each person shall have a time limit of 3 minutes and shall be given notice that 1 minute is remaining. The time limit shall govern all public hearings, citizen comments on the agenda items, and citizen comments on non-agenda items. Comments shall be addressed to the commission. Speakers shall use good manners and refrain from personal attacks, boisterous language, or profanity. Now, the chair is charged with the responsibility of preserving order and decorum, and if necessary, shall cause to be silenced or removed from the commission chambers any person speaking out of order or disrupting the order of the meeting. I don't expect that to happen tonight, but I have seen it happen. Usually that's followed by the chair will give a warning, ask the individual to give them direction, whether it's if they're speaking out of turn or they're causing a disruption or a delay to the meeting. But if they continue to violate and disregard the chair's directions, they may be asked to be removed from the meeting. So with that, I'll turn you back over to you, Commissioner Frohr.
Thank you, Mr. Crockett. So just to follow up with that, we have sign-up sheets. Again, our intent is to follow the procedures as outlined. We have 10 people speaking for, 10 people against. We have possibly up to 5 alternates if time allows. One thing I would want to make clear is that we'd ask people not to repeat themselves. We would want to make sure that that if you signed up to speak in favor or for, that your comments are for, or you'll be called out of order. We want to make sure those lists that we put out are recognized as what we want to hear from the public. It's our duty tonight and our obligation to hear from both sides. As my grandfather once told me, no matter how thin you slice an issue, there's always 2 sides. It's our duty and job tonight to listen to both sides. Keep in mind, this is not the first opportunity we've had as a commission to look at this issue, to address this issue. We've had hundreds of emails, both for and against. We've had a number of phone calls, a number of personal interviews. So just because you may not have the opportunity to speak tonight, your emails, your personal phone calls have all been noted, and that is taken into consideration as we view this tonight. I would say that to make sure, again, this will be a legislative format. No public outburst, applause, yelling will be allowed, or you'll be asked to leave. We're here to hear from both sides. We want to make sure that this is a civil hearing. I expect everybody to be civil to their neighbor, to respect different opinions. As our governor says, let's disagree nicer. Or as I've often been told, it's okay to disagree, but not to be disagreeable. So I would hope that you keep that in mind. We're all neighbors and friends that are here today. It's not good form to make personal attacks or to make sure that your neighbor knows that maybe that they may be in harm's way or deal of harassment, which is just not proper in this situation. So again, no public applause, outburst. Those that are speaking at the mic need to have the opportunity to be told, to be heard, no matter what that may be. So with that, we're going to start with a request, commissioners, to adjourn this public meeting and reconvene as a public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're now in a public hearing and possible action on an ordinance to amend the street regulating plan for Newtown and Old Town Eden and proposed amendment to the architectural theme requirements and standards of the form-based zone to allow a wider range of style options. That'd be file ZTA 2023-03. Mr. Charlie Ewert, you're up. And I understand you have a couple of speakers that will be taking part in your program.
I do, yeah. On the next item, this first
Yep.
item is the street regulating plan as well as the architectural standard amendments.
Go ahead.
So I put in front of you guys the ordinance, pulled it out of the packet and put it in front of you. This ordinance, I wanted to brief you on a couple of minor changes to the ordinance from what was in the packet. If you flip to the last page of that ordinance, you'll see, last 2 pages, you'll see the street regulating plan maps. Somebody mentioned that the way that the previous ordinance was formatted, you couldn't really tell which maps were being removed and which ones were being added. So I just clarified that with the red cross out and the blue underline. Okay. Aside from that, I don't know that I have a whole lot to say today. We gave a really exhaustive analysis and presentation to the Planning Commission a few weeks ago, which you guys have been able to review if you watch the video. And then in your packets, you've got pretty much all the information that you need to make a decision today. We've had a lot of conversations otherwise. Any direct conversations about architectural standards or the proposed street regulating plan that I can help you with?
Okay. Commissioners, questions or comments for Mr. Ewert?
None, not at this time for me, Mr. Chair.
I don't have any questions other than just to thank you for your patience. Being the new guy here, I've had a lot of questions, and I appreciate you helping me understand this, and it'll be helpful in making my decision, so thank you.
You're very
Appreciate
welcome.
it.
Happy to help.
And Charlie, I just want to be clear, from the original map, there were several maps that were proposed over the last number of months.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us which, and we went back in after hearing some public comments that maybe it was proper to eliminate some of those streets. Can you review that with us, exactly what streets were eliminated from that?
I can.
I'm going to call it the last edition because I don't know which one it was.
Okay. So this is the latest rendition, and it could change even more tonight if you guys wanted to. So what you'll see here is there used to be a multifamily and government and institutional street that rounded kind of the bottom of the bluff here in Eden. That's been pulled off. There was a street that went through what is currently the Sunnyfield Farms that had a variety of different uses, including commercial, multifamily, and small lot residential that kind of bounded this area here. That's been pulled out as well. There are also quite a few other streets that have just been changed in general. Most of that is up in where the applicant is requesting the rezone, where some of these streets, for example, this upper street here, on the existing street regulating plan, this whole thing is slated for multifamily, and that more than half of that has been pulled down to just small lot residential. I told you guys I was going to do a brief analysis of the changes and how they affect the outcome of the community, and this table does that. So just to understand how to read it, we're looking at the total net length, either loss or gain, of specific street types. And you can see here, you're losing quarter of a mile, so the 1,600 here, you're losing a quarter of a mile of government institutional streets. And just for reference, government institutional builds on top of the vehicle-oriented commercial, which builds on the mixed-use commercial. So mixed-use commercial, you can get quite a bit of density in there. That means you can do the same in vehicle-oriented as well as government institutional. So losing about a quarter mile there, or for example, multifamily, which is the highest density zone, or potential street type, you're losing another about quarter of a mile total out of that. Overall, your total net road length loss is about 1,700 feet less road in the on these planned street regulating plans. And then what that equates to, roughly speaking, is about 53 less development rights that could be transferred into this village in the future unless something changes or streets change in the future. So a little bit less development potential for the Eden area.
Got it. And just so we're clear, is that this last edition, is that the staff recommended street regulating plan?
Yes, we recommended a variety of different plans to the Planning Commission. There's a whole bunch of different ways to do this, and so this is the one that we came to a conclusion on after working with you guys to kind of try to figure out where some of the alignment should be, and this is our recommendation, yes.
Got it. Anything else?
Nope, that's it from me unless you've got other questions.
Commissioners? All right, moving on, Charlie. Does that conclude your presentation on street regulating?
That does.
All right, let's move now to the next item, discussion take possible action on ordinance to amend the Weber County zoning map, rezoning and possible development agreement on approximately 20 acres of land at approximately 5204 East, Highway 166, from the AV3 to the FB zone, form-based zone, file ZMA 2023-09. Charlie.
So, whoop, I just closed the thing that I needed. You guys have seen this already. Let's just look at the map online. If the rezone is approved, the form-based rezone is approved, this is the essentially what the rezone map will look like, or the zoning map will look like. You guys know all the details behind this one, probably better than I do at this point after various conversations with members of the public. So if you have any other questions for me, I'm more than happy to dive in. Otherwise, I'll save my comments.
Okay. And Charlie, it looks like there's a form-based zone to the east.
There is.
That's already been approved, is that correct?
That's right. That's a low-density, 1-acre lot development style over in that area.
Got it, okay. All right, did you have other speakers that wanted to?
Yes. So there was the applicant would like to address the commission for a moment, and then following the applicant, there are some comments from one of the engineers of Ogden City who would like to address you guys.
Okay.
Thanks.
Commissioners, hello. My name is Brent Bateman. I'm with the law firm of Dent, Durham, Jones, and Pendergrass, and I am an attorney representing the applicant today. I am here to make sure that the law gets followed. Not that I have any concern about that here. I just want to make 2 quick points, and I will not take long. The first point is that I said something in the Planning Commission meeting when we were here, and I just want to amend that a little bit. What I said there was the growth is coming. And what I want to amend is to say the growth is here. It's not coming. It's here. It's needed, it's necessary, and it's here. It has come and it has hit areas in the Wasatch Back, the whole Park City, Kimball Junction area, the Heber Valley area, and it's coming to this area. And the whole question is never how can we stop it? The question is how can we manage it? And I'm not trying to grandstand or anything, but I've been doing this for a very long time. I've done land use law my entire life, which is my entire career, which is nearly 25 years. And I've been to all of those places, and I've been all over the state. I've been to nearly every community in the state at one point or another, and I've seen a lot of plans and a lot of ideas to manage growth. And this is just my opinion, but I just want to express the opinion that this plan is a good one. The plan to manage growth is a good one. The idea that we can take and create population centers and take density away from the areas, from the beautiful and the open and the wide open areas, and keep those places like that for a special place like the Ogden Valley. And there are other special places in the state that wish they had done this, but for a special place like Ogden Valley, this is a good plan. Again, that's just my opinion. Now I want to, and that's the first point I want to make. The second point I want to make comes more from my legal background. My clients, as applicants, and whatever happens today, other applicants are going to come, and other applicants are going to come, and other applicants are going to come. And when you come seeking a zone change, there's not much you can do except for look at the general plan and try to implement it. I mean, you can make an application that's not compliant with the general plan. Generally, that's bad planning. Generally, that's hard to do. But when you have a plan and you come and you just try to implement that, I mean, that's as much as you can do, and that's what my clients have done here. There's a plan. My clients have come with an application. They're the first, understand that. So they're subject to all the vitriol and everything else. But they've just tried to come here and implement the general plan as it has been duly passed by this body. And so with that in mind, we hope that we understand that the decision you make today is not only going to matter as far as what happens to this particular development, but it's here. Growth is here. And are you going to follow your plan or not? I mean, and that's the question I think that's before you. And that's all I had to say.
Questions for Mr. Bateman? So just to be clear, Mr. Bateman, you feel that this development then meets the intent of the general plan, realizing that the general plan is not specific ordinance, it just is a...
You've got to keep in mind that the stage that we're at, as far as this development goes. We're at the first stage of a 50-step process. Okay, and so once the zoning change happens, there's a lot of other things that have got to happen down the road in order to actually build homes and put things there. And a lot of ways that you can make sure that the things happen there are beautiful, that they happen well, that they're compliant with the community, that they work. Okay, and all of those things are going to have to happen. And the developer is definitely willing to contribute to the community, wanting to contribute to the community. So yes, it meets the plan in that it comes in with the form-based zone plan. The idea is to collect density and create a density center, right, in the area where that's supposed to be. And you know, as we go forward, we'll find out more what that looks like and how that's going to work. But as far as the general plan goes, yes, it qualifies.
Thank you. Anything else?
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Bateman. I believe we have a representative from Ogden City that. Welcome.
Good evening, Commissioners. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. My name is Taylor Nielsen. I am the Assistant City Engineer for Ogden City. I apologize for the long walk up here. I was seated in the back, and it's always good to see a full house, and people are excited to come in and talk about different items that are always in front of the Commission. The one item that I wanted to make sure and talk about, I was able to read through the staff report, and I appreciate Mr. Ewert and his team and everything that they have done. As we see developments, changes, population growth, amongst other items, Ogden City always has an interest in areas like these because of where our wells are, because of where we get basically all of our water for the city of Ogden. We serve anywhere between 90 and 120,000 different members of the population who will come and visit with the city. And so as you see development come, as you see different items start to approach and arise in these different areas, it becomes important to us to try and protect those different areas that are able to serve us with water. So some of those comments that I saw on there were an installation of the sewer system. Your staff seemed to be very thorough in a lot of those comments, and we appreciate the foresight and the thought going into some of that for these developments. We know that development is eventually inevitable in many different forms, so we appreciate you guys and the consideration of helping us protect our system and ensure that we're able to continue to have water for a long time to come. And so thank you for those considerations. We would hope that any development that comes in, that you would continue to have these same considerations of sewer systems and making sure that we have the correct and proper infrastructure going forward. So thank you.
Thank you for being with us, Ogden City. All right, Charlie, anything else before we move on?
One more brief mention in the ordinance. If you do adopt the rezone ordinance, there is a clause in there that says, at this time, it says that if the ordinance goes into effect today or is adopted or approved today, that it doesn't actually go into effect or isn't implemented until after a development agreement is negotiated by you guys and the applicant and fully executed. And so the rezone wouldn't actually take place until that document gets recorded. If that's not a consideration you guys would like to see, if you just want to approve the rezone outright, then you could just tell me to delete that. I'll get a fresh copy over to Craig for you guys to sign. Or otherwise, you can leave it in there and we'll work on a development agreement with the applicant. Or finally, if you aren't comfortable with the proposal, you can deny it and the ordinance goes away. Okay.
All right. With that, Commissioners, I believe we're ready to start the public hearing. I'd request a motion to adjourn the let's start with the public hearing. So we're now to public comments, and the decision is, do we start with for or against? So, Mr. Hatch, I'm going to, since I don't have a coin with me, I'm going to ask you to pick a number between 1 and 7. The closest one to it would be, we start with the for the zone change. If not, we'd start without.
Number 3.
No, I think, so that's not the number. I think we're going to start with those against then. We'll start with the against. All right, so again, keep in rule the 3-minute rule. And we will recognize for the first person to talk. Chris Crockett will name that person. They'll come up and have 3 minutes.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and publicly apologize for how I pronounce names. So if I slaughter it, just please come up and correct it for the record. So we're starting with the against. The first name on the list is Zane Frohr.
Good afternoon. I've been retained as counsel by several interested citizens, and so I may be asked to talk on behalf of a couple of people. Is that going to be permitted?
If they're next on the agenda for against, they can yield the time to you, but we'll not give you, you'll have to come back to the mic if that's the case.
That'll be fine.
So
That'll be
everybody will have 3 minutes. If somebody wants to yield their time, that's proper, but only during that slot and only for additional 3 minutes.
I just want to make sure everybody understood that.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay, proceed.
Thank you, Chairman. So, as I understand it, there are two matters that are being considered by the County Commission today. The first one is the amendment of the street regulating plan, and the second one is the Eden Crossing rezone. These are both applicant-initiated requests. The outcome that my clients request is the denial of both applications on the ground that they are inconsistent with the general plan and would thereby improperly be an ad hoc amendment to the general plan, leading to the very urban sprawl the general plan was intended to limit. This is not about stopping development. It is about managing development consistent with the general plan, and that is what my clients are asking. They are asking that this commission respect the general plan. And I'm going to use my time and the time that's yielded to me to try and explain on behalf of my clients why they feel like this does not meet the general plan. So let me talk about the street regulating plan first. The proposed amendment to the street regulating plan is inconsistent with the general plan. Under the current general plan, the proposed street regulating plan makes drastic changes to the county's infrastructure and public utilities. This includes proposed new roads, repurposing through upzoning or downzoning existing roads, and adding a privately financed sewer system to the network of utilities within the affected area. I'm referring to, if you look at the maps, it's page 39 and 40 of the general plan, you'll see the roads that are outlined on the general plan. The street regulating plan adds multiple roads that are not depicted on that. And this is important as we go through this. Under the existing general plan, there are two distinct areas of designated higher density planning within the greater Eden area, New Town Eden and Old Town Eden. Again, if you go to page 31 and of the maps in the general plan, some of these were double-sided. It's the map with the circles, tiny circles, showing the designated villages. The planning staff's report on the rezone issues acknowledges that the general plan has designated 8 of these villages, which include 2 distinct Eden villages. This is not an attempt, the application is not an attempt to tweak or make modifications to an already existing plan. Instead, it is an attempt to create a new single contiguous Eden village, eliminating the rural transition corridor separating these 2 villages as adopted by the general plan. And that's the biggest problem with this rezone and the change, is it's eliminating the rural corridor, and I think I'm going to have to sit down for a moment. But thank you.
I'm sure we'll see you again, Zane.
Oh, you will.
Okay. All right, so that is the first against. Now we'll hear one for the proposals. Chris,
Laura Warburton.
please come up. Welcome.
Welcome. Okay, hi, my name is Laura Warburton. I live at 7328 East, 1450 North, Huntsville, Utah. I served on the Planning Commission for 8 years, and my signature is on the current lawful general plan, Ogden Valley General Plan. I first want to play a 2-minute excerpt from the fall EOC conference where our sitting governor makes a plea to pave the way for development for the sake of our current families.
Impact the ability of our kids and grandkids to live in this state and be raised near us. Those of us from rural Utah have for generations understood the pain of having to export our children and grandchildren. All of Utah is going to start learning. It will impact the ability in the sound of my voice, every planning commission, every county commissioner, every city council. This should be your #1 issue. What are you going to do over the next year to increase the supply of housing in your community? Period. I want to know that. If you don't want state government to make you do it, then figure out how to do it. And I know many of you are. Many of you are. I know I'm going to get yelled at by Mayor Ramsey. I just want to know that many of you are, but a lot of you are not. A lot of you are not taking this seriously enough. A lot of you think it's somebody else's job to do that, but our community is different. Our city is unique. Our city doesn't have to, somebody else will do that. That's for Vineyard to do, right? No. If you care about your citizens, if you care about this state, if you care about your kids and grandkids, figure out a way to build housing quicker, figure out a way to build housing more cheaply, figure out a way to make decisions faster, figure out a way to streamline everything you want to do. You can do all of it. You can do all of it. You can do it the right way. You can still do it the right way. But every day it takes you longer to make a decision, that's less housing and more expensive housing, right? Every added requirement you put onto housing in your community, that's more expensive housing and less housing.
Commissioners, in the Ogden Valley today, a small minority, less than 10%, seek to impede our shared vision for growth. Our collective effort aims at unity and prosperity, transcending individual interests. We cannot let the concerns of a few hinder the aspirations of the many. The Valley's growth enhances our quality of life and economic opportunities, fostering communities' well-being. Let us reaffirm our commitment to collaboration, overcoming challenges together. Our unity will propel us towards a future where the Ogden Valley stands as a beacon of resilience and prosperity for all. Thank you, and thank you for your service. I know this is not easy for you. So thank you,
Laura. Next, so we would have, the next to be against number 2, Chris.
Cord Pack.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Cord Pack. I've been a longtime resident of Ogden Valley for some 55 years. I would like to share my deep love and incredible respect for the men and women who have gone before. Cemeteries in this area are filled with white crosses so that we could be here tonight. For that, I am truly grateful, very grateful. At this time, I would like to defer my 2 minutes and 45 seconds to our attorney, Zane Frewer. Zane?
Good. Zane, you're back up.
We're going to have some fun tonight. We'll just be back up and down. I want you to pay attention to, this is from page 2.
Hold your mic down.
Yes. This is from page 2 of the Planning Commission report. So you can see this is the proposed area of the rezone. This is the corridor of rural community that was contemplated by the plan, and I'm going to use this one. This is from page 13 of the report. And you can see it blows it up here. And the reason why I'm using this one is because I want you to compare these two circles. This circle, I don't know if it was on purpose or if it was unintentional. This circle is intentionally larger than the red circles on the general plan. And I think the attempt to do that, and if you can see, because the proposed road that we're talking about does not exist yet, and it is not included in one of the smaller circles in the general plan, but it is now included in the proposed rezone amendment planning staff report. Now this is important because this appears to be exceeding the bounds of the general plan. So this request was properly rejected by the Ogden Valley Planning Commission, which noted that it did not conform to the existing general plan. Because the street regulation plan specifically impacts the approval of infrastructure, particularly roads, roundabouts, etc., this is uniquely problematic for the county. It is my opinion that the street regulating plan is an attempt to amend the general plan. Rather than comply with the general plan and implement the general plan, it is an attempt to amend the general plan. And to do that in an ad hoc way by changing zoning and by using the street regulation plan to affect the change that would otherwise have to take place through the general plan amendment process. And this is important because each county, they may amend their general plan, but that under section 403 of CLUDMA starts with the Planning Commission. So where the Planning Commission recommends a general plan amendment, and then the County Commission can take that up, and the County Commission can literally do whatever they want with that. They don't have to abide by that, but the process starts with the Planning Commission. That is important because that is how the public gets invested in the process. And I'll see you in a minute.
All right. Next speaker would speak in 4.
Mark Shepway? Oh, I'm sorry. Schweppe.
All right. Well, I didn't get the memo that it was a dress-up party. I apologize. But as I look around the community here, it seems a little bit like we're in Compton, which saddens me. I don't think we're the Crips and the Bloods. We're all neighbors in Ogden Valley. So that was really my intention originally, to share my thoughts with you because of the divisiveness and the negativity around this subject. I appreciate everyone has an opinion, but we should just continue to be good neighbors. I know, and I'm friends with most people here, and I just want to share my opinion, and I'm sure everyone gets to do the same, but I hope that we can come to a happy resolution and maintain our friendship in the Ogden Valley. So, routing response to the divisiveness, my wife and I want to express how we as longtime residents and business owners love the Valley, as well as the lifestyle that's found in the Valley. It's a magical place that hasn't changed much over the years. However, we are lacking in a number of amenities, restaurants, commerce, short-term housing, and affordable housing, and infrastructure such as sewer. These are all key to managing and accommodating the imminent growth, which will happen regardless of what a large portion of Ogden Valley thinks, and the fine residents, are able to express their opinion. But we love and support the careful planning, foresight, and thoughtfulness the developers of Eden Crossing have put into modeling, managing, and implementing the growth of commercial hubs, so as to be way ahead of the game as the Valley's part and full-time population and visitor interests grow. Planning ahead for the inevitable is not only responsible, but necessary to maintain the wonderful pastoral field that we have today, and envisioning and implementing community needs, such as future traffic flow, commercial corridors, residential and commercial development, as well as affordable housing and community amenities, is key to maintaining the look and feel of Ogden Valley as it grows in interest, population, and use. Great expense has been and continues to be incurred both financially and emotionally in the effort to build a community where the needs of the residents as well as the numerous visitors are met well into the future. Infrastructure, commerce, amenities, and housing. And we are in support of the development of Eden Crossing and thoughtful, well-planned growth, and petition you as county commissioners to take that into consideration. I appreciate the time, and I've got a lot of extra time. I get to talking a little bit fast when I'm kind of under the gun. But I think, instead of attacking people individually, we should, maybe come about that a different way. And I think this is a great forum to do that, wherever everyone's voice can be heard. It's easy to put up signs. It's sometimes harder to dig sewer lines. It's a community that's small, and it stems from 3 individual communities that used to attend boxing matches, which turned into church basketball games a long time ago. And we have this divisiveness, a little bit, that we can probably just join forces and, I think, be a better community in the process. And I think this is the step. This is the future. The Valley will outlive all of us. But thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mark. Next, Chris.
Shanna Francis?
I defer my time to Mr. Floor.
Zane, you're back up.
So let me take a moment to talk about Section 406 of CLUDMA, which I think is important in this case, because oftentimes counties appropriately treat a general plan as a guide. But in this case, where we're talking about expanding the streets, expanding infrastructure, it's more than a guide. Under Section 406 of CLUDMA, the county may not approve any public use, any public infrastructure that does not conform to the general plan. Because the street regulating plan diverts and is not consistent with the general plan, I think it would be illegal for this commission to approve these applications at this time without first amending the general plan. Now, this doesn't speak to whether this is a good idea or not. This speaks to the process, getting the public to invest. And as you can see from all the people here, the public is invested. They want an outcome that's fair. So let me switch over to Eden Crossing rezone. One of the big issues that I think exists in this situation is the issue of whether or not this is spot zoning. Spot zoning occurs when an authority grants special privileges or imposes restrictions on a particular property that are not otherwise granted or imposed on surrounding properties in the larger area, and without regard to the unified plan. And it's that last part that I really want to focus on. If this goes beyond, if this is inconsistent from the general plan because we're going outside of the village, and I really believe, looking at the maps, we're no longer in New Town, we're no longer in Old Town, we're in between. And what we're doing is we're combining the two, and that clearly was not the intent of the general plan. The general plan intended there would be two distinct Eden towns with a corridor, a rural corridor, where there was a transition away from those. By doing this, you are eliminating that transition, and I think you are doing it through spot zoning. You are granting privileges outside of these villages to a particular property and allowing them, in the words of the planning staff, to create their own urban center. This urban center is not called for in the general plan. It's explicitly excluded in the general plan in favor of the two existing, already designated Eden town centers. And that's part of the reason why the Planning Commission denied this rezone. And I would advise and encourage the Commission to follow the Planning Commission's denial and follow their recommendation based upon the factors that they laid out. Let me kind of wrap up. I'm going to jump to the end because I think it's important. I'm going to read my final statement. Finally, pressing ahead with these applications has serious legal implications, which I have attempted to summarize in this short presentation. And what I'd like to see is that instead of changing the general plan through ad hoc amendments, we work, the Commission work with the community and get this done right. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris.
Dr. Robert Wadman.
Commissioners, it's a pleasure to be here, and it's been a unique experience with the impact that this has had on the Valley. To start with, my name is Robert Wadman. My family and I have lived in the Nordic Valley area for 26 years, and over the past decade, I have had the responsibility of assisting countries that were formerly under the Soviet Union in their transition from communism to democracy. And in the process of that, seeing these fresh democracies expand has been a unique experience. And as we look at our situation today, the Constitution, we've seen the exercise of the First Amendment, the number of people that have put up signs, the number of people that have had a chance to speak, and so on. In the course of that, I think as we look at the Constitution, we often miss some of the points that are kind of buried. First of all, in the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution, the last paragraph points out that property cannot be taken without just compensation. And in the course of that, when you say property is taken, the Supreme Court has ruled that taking the economic development and potential financial benefit for the owner of the property is in fact covered by the Fifth Amendment. And I want to point out that Anton Scalia, probably one of the most conservative justices, has written in the case, let me read it to you. It is the Lucas versus South Carolina Coastal Council. And he writes that sustaining a zone to the detriment of a person's ability to gain economic opportunity is unconstitutional. So you have in front of you a set of circumstances right now that is on that really loose-ended part. The idea that in the Constitution there is no mention of local government. It is the federal government and deferred under the 10th Amendment to state governments. And then the state government has now gone forward with this idea that local governments can pass ordinances, do those kinds of things. But the bottom line of it is it goes back to the federal government, the United States Constitution. And if you'll read closely the Lucas versus South Carolina Coastal Community, that Anton Scalia writes to sustain a zone that deprives economic benefit is unconstitutional. Now, having lived in Ogden Valley now for 26 years, we've enjoyed the Valley Market. My time is gone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chris?
Stephen Noel?
Commissioners, good evening. I'm Stephen Noel. With only 3 minutes, I refer to that statement above your heads there on the wall that says public trust to conduct the affairs of county government in such a way as to nurture public confidence. It is reported that trust in government currently is at an all-time low. The people's confidence in government has taken a huge hit, and I think you know this, and I respectfully ask you what this body and the planning department has done and is doing to fix this generally, and specifically with respect to the land use decisions in the valley. In October of last year, the Planning Commission was asked to approve mixed-use zoning, and it did so. However, this body chose to expand that approval to include a street regulating plan. That street regulating plan was not a part of the Planning Commission's approval. While streets were mentioned, it was not a part of that approval. I find it troubling that this body asked the Planning Department to actually expand that approval in such a way to include an actual street regulating plan, and then voted on it in January of this year. That street regulating plan is not properly before this body. It got off to a bad start, and it is invalid from the beginning. Now, while this body has the authority to adjust what a planning commission might request, it doesn't have the authority to create something that wasn't there to begin with. Even if such authority existed, commissioners, I submit it is not good government. This body seems shockingly intent, to me anyway, to transforming Ogden Valley. Now, growth may be coming, but this is not an exercise in dealing with growth that is coming. This, in my opinion, is an exercise in creating this growth, and then using that creation to justify these actions that are being proposed today. The vision that is being proposed is hugely impactful to the citizens of the valley. And honestly, it should have occurred to at least one member of this body or the planning department to send that so-called expanded version of the Planning Commission's approval back to the Planning Commission and let the Planning Commission address it and let the public see what's being proposed specifically to get investment and to be a part of it. This body and the Planning Department should seek first to understand and to listen to the public and those of us who will have to live with the consequences of this vision of the valley. I understand that you may not want to have to spend several hours listening to the public express disagreement with your proposals, but honestly, that is the work of an elected official. Limiting the discussion to 10 for and against creates the illusion that the Valley residents are split down the middle on these issues, and that is just not the case. Thank you.
Next.
Phil Hansen?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Phil Hansen. I'm a full-time resident in Eden, owner and operator of a restaurant based in Eden and a backcountry operation in the mountains. Also recently served as the interim general manager of Powder Mountain. All of our businesses in the tourism and hospitality space are already facing very serious issues in our lack of labor, affordable housing, lodging for our guests, and offices for our operations. I was excited when I saw the plan for Eden Crossing because it has solutions for all 4 of those issues. We struggle every year to pull together enough employees for our operation. The nature of our business requires late nights and really early mornings, making the commute a big tax on our employees' lives and limiting factor on both the quantity and quality of employees we can attract. Equally challenging is scrambling to find lodging for our guests. It's no secret that our ski resorts on that side of the valley have struggled. And one of the major reasons is the lack of places to stay. Without those, we are relegated to just day trips and business passing through. On the personal side, it has been my dream ever since I was a kid to live in this valley, and even more of a dream to work here. The reason I bought here is the same reason I'm in the tourism industry. I love sharing the feeling of our valley and playing in our mountains and lake with my family, friends, and visitors from all over the country and globe. I was excited when I first learned of the general plan because I thought it provided a smart solution to protect the space we all love and designate space for housing and amenities our businesses depend on. I think we have a real opportunity to be one of the few mountain communities where people that work here can also live here. I believe adhering to the general plan, or Powder, Monument, Nordic, Snow Basin have all recently announced major investments, and the housing and lodging provided in Eden Crossing will be critical factors to our success. I believe adhering to the general plan and approving Eden Crossing will provide the infrastructure and amenities our businesses need and many of our residents want, while preserving the feeling that makes this place a true Eden. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris.
Angela Dean.
Hi, Angela Dean of Liberty. Adjusting the street regulating plan as proposed results in zoning that is pulled like taffy each time a development proposal requests it, transferring development opportunity from existing properties to enrich another. County planning staff stated in 2021 that Valley Junction was planned to be the new Edentown's Main Street, and it's reflected in the ordinance adopted in 2022. This change would allow one private individual to override this and relocate Main Street to their land. This moving target creates chaos, uncertainty, and is the antithesis of planning. This reactionary form of zoning squashes development potential rather than encouraging it. If we can't trust the general plan and implementation of zoning, how can you expect local businesses and residents to take a risk on a moving target? Staff and the Ogden Valley Planning Commission have pointed to flaws in the current TDR implementation that run counter to the general plan. Rather than allowing those flaws to be exploited, the focus should be on amending it to function as intended. This change opens the floodgates to misuse. Bringing TDRs from hidden hillside locations to visible valley floor open space is in direct opposition to the stated goals, not to mention the tens of thousands of commercial square feet that will be built without the use of TDRs. Past comments among you imply that citizens opposed to this are completely against growth or are uninformed. That is both insulting and inaccurate. If information has been misunderstood along the way, it's precisely because it's coming at us at the speed of light with rules changing by the minute. This process has felt like someone has thrown 1,000 marbles across the gym floor and we race to pick them up before the game is over. Yet here we are with heroic efforts made by many who have rapidly put the pieces together and have a deep understanding of the general plan violations being proposed. You have heard from many concerned citizens through calls, letters, and meetings urging you to join the Ogden Valley Planning Commission to vote no to this proposal. And there are thousands who have signed petitions against it. You have heard over and over the many specific ways this does not meet the vision, goals, principles, and implementation policies of the general plan. You have heard them, but are you truly listening? Smart growth means leveraging our unique individual strengths to foster a strong sense of community spirit. It has the potential to attract businesses and visitors and serve the needs of residents while preserving our unique identity. You have a great asset in this room tonight, an engaged, informed, and action-oriented citizenry. This should be seen as an opportunity, not opposition. We should be on the same team, striving to preserve the unique sense of community and place while preparing wisely for changes that will come. Given the rapid pace of change recently, it may be time to revisit the general plan. Rather than rush to approve this before evaluating the long-term impacts against the will of the people, let us undertake this process together with a diversity of voices at the table, making informed and intentional choices that define our future. Even though the majority in this room are not given the chance to speak, they are here for the love of Ogden Valley and are passionate about protecting their home. They are full of hopeful anticipation that they will see government at its best. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Amber Ravel?
Welcome.
Thank you so much for allowing me to share my thoughts and feelings tonight. My name is Amber Rawl. It's kind of hard with the spelling. And I have a love for this charming valley and a place that I call home. My connection to Eden dates way back to high school. It has always been a dream of mine to not just visit, but to live here, and I am very proud to call myself a resident of the valley. When I made the decision to move here as a single mom, I found a great home for me and my 17-year-old. Sadly, my adult children who love Eden as much as we do are not able to find any affordable homes to rent or buy at this time. The mountains and the feeling and the energy of this community is the reason why I chose Eden to be our home. I tell my friends there's just something about this valley that you breathe differently when you're there. As I had settled into my daily life here, I've learned of the opportunity and a plan to enhance and strengthen the community. While Maverick and the Valley Market cater to our essential needs, and I love it, but it's not a great option for meeting new people and building friends and connections, especially for families with older children. As a mother, I believe that having a place for our kids to interact, to make friends, and have a safe, walkable main street where they connect with other people that's outside of school is very important. The prospect of Eden Crossing fills me with hope and excitement. I believe this is a very thoughtful development in line with the general plan. This is not going to change the charm of our amazing little magical valley. We can still have large fields. We can live in nature, be in the mountains, ski and boat, and we can have the properties that we all love. But how great would it be to have a main street where families that can gather like mine, enjoy family-friendly community spaces, walk to local shops, restaurants, have affordable housing, so our children can have the opportunity to continue to live in the place that they can call home. I see Eden Crossing as a major social economic asset to our community, and taking a step forward in investing in the health and safety of our community while protecting our valuable water resources. I believe this plan will enhance the quality of life for families in our valley while preserving the charm and essence of this special place. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you. Chris.
Tina Allred?
Commissioners, the majority of Ogden Valley do not feel represented by you. As you can tell by the massive attendance at the meeting tonight, they are desperately trying to get through to you. They don't feel you are representing their best interests. They don't support the changes being made in the valley, so much so that the citizens have rallied to support an effort to become our own city to create representation which will reflect the will of the people. I can almost guarantee you if you do not follow the recommendations of the Ogden Valley Planning Commission and deny approval on the two issues at hand tonight, this will assuredly pour fuel on that fire. We feel this development goes against several principles of the Ogden Valley General Plan, and here are just a few. Land Use Implementation 1.2.4 prohibit to the extent allowed by law development in identified crucial habitat areas, wildlife corridors, on identified prominent ridge lines, and within natural riparian areas and natural waterways. Both of the land parcels in this project are sitting right in the middle of a riparian wetland as identified by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Not only would this proposal move the development towards this wetland, but currently a black water sewer line has been or is about to be put in right through the middle of it. And I have a map for you. Commercial Development Implementation 1.1.2 require new commercial or mixed-use development to locate on property currently zoned for commercial uses. Avoid rezoning new property to commercial or manufacturing until such time as the community supports it. Future commercial or mixed zoning rezoning should only be considered adjacent to existing commercial or mixed-use zoning in a manner that creates village clusters and avoids strip commercial along the highway corridors. This project is clearly not adjacent to any commercial zoning. In fact, it lies between two residential properties. The property is not currently zoned for commercial use. Let's be honest, the consequence of amending the street regulating plan is nothing more than changing the zoning. The catalyst for this proposed change seems to have been the submission of this project, which benefits a single developer. In a recent article regarding conservation in the Standard Examiner, water conservation in the Standard Examiner dated October 4th, 2023, Commissioner Ford made an interesting statement. Let's get out of the equation, left out of the equation, this is a quote, left out of the equation, though, is the Ogden Valley. The Western Weaver Planning Commission in July recommended changes which the commissioners approved on September 26, while members of the Ogden Valley Planning Commission said they weren't interested. And here's the quote from Commissioner Ford. Obviously, we are going to respect the Planning Commission's wishes, Commissioner Ford said. I find that statement refreshing because both the changes to the street regulating plan and rezoning of agricultural property to commercial have come before the Ogden Valley Planning Commission and they've been soundly rejected. The citizens of Ogden are asking you to respect the decision of the Ogden Valley Planning Commission.
Thank you. Chris.
Crystal Schweppe.
Thank you, Commissioners, for allowing me to speak tonight. Just quickly, I do want to recognize that there is a lot of people that are actually for.
Would you please give your name again?
Oh, yeah, Crystal Schweppe.
Thank you.
I do know a lot of people that are actually for this proposal, but unfortunately, when you make public comments, the attacks have been quite frequently and quite harsh. So I know a lot of people just tend to not want to say anything for fear of retaliation. I am a local business owner that serves Valley homeowners, and I'm here to offer my support of Eden Crossing. In my experience, there's little to no commercial space available in the Valley for those of us who live and want to work here. When a space becomes available, it results in a bidding war and many opportunities are lost because of little to no inventory. I desire to see community growth and more opportunities for fellow residents. Thank you. Now I'll be reading statements from two other business owners that reflect my thoughts in support of Eden Crossing. First off is a statement from Roger Terry. I'm a partner of both Morgan Valley Food LLC and Terry Phillips Properties LLC, together owning 12 plus acres of property in the heart of Eden Village, designated area. Approximately 6 acres on each side of Wolf Creek Drive, just north of the four-way stop. Having reviewed the Eden Crossing plan, I quickly came to the conclusion that creating a walkable Main Street and mixed-use commercial district without the additional crush of added traffic congestion is an idea that I could support. A well-planned off-highway mixed-use development with infrastructure and feeder roads will help Eden community avoid traffic problems and congestion that will be coming with inevitable growth to the area. A cluster of development around sewer infrastructure is what the general plan has called for. A well-planned off-highway mixed-use Main Street that is easily accessed by driving, biking, or walking opens up several possibilities for community events such as street festivals, outdoor markets, and concerts. These could be held in such a location without the impact to state highway traffic. I support the Eden Crossing Development Street and Street Regulatory Plans. Thank you. Next is a statement from Richard Snyder. I've been a Valley resident since the 1980s. In the 90s, I developed a commercial property in the center of Eden. The Eden Professional Center was an early effort to create a work environment for those who lived in the Valley. Our project has been a success for the past 25 years, and many Valley residents have positively benefited from this project. We are involved with Nordic Valley Ski Resort with the specific intent of representing our community. Not growing any community, whether it be Jackson Hole, Mount Snow, Breckenridge, and now Eden, all places which I've lived, are void of those old and new residents who intrusively complain and verbally tear down those who wish to improve upon the community and its infrastructure and offerings. Growth in Ogden Valley is not going to stop. The concept of developing both the infrastructure and amenities in the downtown area of Eden is a must. We only have two choices: be left behind or try to stay a step ahead of what is inevitably coming our way. Both my wife and I are in favor of these concepts that are being put forward. We feel strongly that now is the time to embrace and hammer out these sorts of infrastructure upgrades. We believe there are thoughtful, caring people involved in this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Kirk Langford.
Hello, my name is Kirk Langford from Eden, Utah. Thank you for your service, commissioners, and for having this meeting and letting people talk about this particular project. I am not in favor of this particular project, not because it's no growth or not in my backyard. I don't think this is smart growth. I have grown up in the valley from the time I was a little kid, and as Gage has said many times, sorry, Commissioner Faure, the valley's not the place we grew up in. But this is a super high-density project in the wrong spot. The geology and geography of this piece of property has been wet and flooded the drainage off of Wolf Creek, and we've bounced the water off to the east, and it's going down into Old Town Eden, and it's just not the place where this project should be. It's also, in my opinion, from being 45 years in the ski business, 25 running one of the major companies, the kind of project you would see in a resort ski town. I don't think you could get this through any planning commission or city commission in any resorts I've been to around the country, and I've been to them all. I've been involved in this planning process since the early 90s when Craig Barker was still here. And I'd like to just address a couple other things, talk about the transfer of development rights. You know, we're not saving, and we have not saved 1 foot of any farmland or valuable open space with this TDR. We've transferred TDRs off steep slopes that maybe wouldn't have got developed for decades. We're inducing demand. Inducing demand is something that planners know is an action that they want to try to avoid. And we have commercial that was identified in the general plan, and I was there for every meeting in that general plan, and their Old Town area, and that's working out wonderfully. There's the New Town, which was behind the Maverick, and as a couple of you commissioners would know, that's where I think you should be rezoning, and you should continue that up along the river so you can leave the road open. With this rezone in front of this area and the four-way stop and the roundabout, it's going to be impossible. It's going to be a sore for this community for the future and decades beyond. I would also ask you to not forfeit your ability to negotiate a community benefit for this rezone before you sign the rezone. So far, we haven't seen any positive benefits for this developer. It's outside where it's supposed to be. The density's higher. We're not transferring development rights off of the farms. They're coming off of places that aren't going to be used anyway. And we should suspend the TDR ordinance until we can get our hands around that. So please negotiate for the rezone, and I would deny this. Thank you.
Thanks, Kirk. Next.
Scott McGonigal.
Thank you for having me. I've been an Ogden resident for 26 years. I've raised 3 kids there, all own property up there now.
Would you restate your name, sir?
Scott McGonigal.
Okay, got it.
How are you, Gage?
Good to see you.
My kids have been married in the valley. They all own property and live there, so we've seen a lot of growth happen over the time. Just like this, we had people opposing Trappers Loop. We had people opposing Valley Elementary. Like our governor of Utah says, it's time to grow ahead of that growth. If we wait, we're going to be overran. John, I've known since I've moved here, probably 35 years. I've been on a lot of his developments. He's built bike trails that I bike trail on every summer that he didn't have to build. He has horse trails that he didn't have to build to connect trail to trail through his communities. He's the right guy to do this. He's one of us. He's lived here for longer than me. You know, we can have an out-of-state guy come in and just slam bam and want our money and leave. That's not what he's about. He's going to do it right. He's who we want to have do it. That's all really I have to say is there's going to be growth. We have to do it right, and John's a great guy to do it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for being here. Next, Chris.
David Hanson.
Commissioner, I've got the materials. Do I give them to you guys?
Over here.
I yield to Zane.
I'm going to try and wrap up because I I like that the public has a chance to hear that, to be heard, and I want to make sure the public has a chance. There's two things I wanted to say. One, I want to make sure this commission is taking into account the new modifications to CLUDMA regarding the water and use. I think that needs to be incorporated into the general plan before this moves forward. The second thing is just the tone. This is a question, it's not a question about property rights, it's a question about entitlement. The idea that this is important as property rights, that's a straw man. We're not here for property rights. We're here to determine whether or not there is an entitlement. I could no more go out and operate a nuclear waste facility on my property or build even a humble home without the county approving it through the entitlement process. And so what my clients are simply asking, there's this parade of horribles that's been argued and presented that it's either you do this or we're going to be overrun by rampant, out-of-control development. That is not the dichotomy that we face. That is a false dichotomy. I want to just read this statement that I worked through with my clients because I think it's important to set the tone of what my clients are about. Opposing these applications is not a rejection of the efforts to develop within the guidance of the general plan. The applicant, Mr. Lewis, has a history of development within the Ogden Valley. While there may be mixed opinions, it cannot be denied that these projects have had a lasting impact upon the community. In the most generous of assessments, the projects have often added great value to the community. The applicant has certainly played a prominent role in shaping the future of Ogden Valley, and often in positive ways. However, this is a product of collaboration with a county that advocates for the community using the tools at its disposal. Those challenging these applications sincerely believe that the county has failed them by neglecting its role in this process. Great things can be accomplished when a developer, such as the applicant, and a diligent county each do their parts and properly abide by their roles. The county needs to go through the proper processes which will allow the community to have confidence that the general plan is what the county professes it to be, and that the processes will not be bent to the urgency of a special interest. That special interest can have a seat at the table, but the special interest will be expected to follow the rules. And then a great product will emerge from that. By properly amending the general plan through the Planning Commission process, or by denying this and asking the applicant to conform to the general plan, the county will reassure the community that it takes its role seriously. It will communicate that special interests can have a seat at the table, but will also play by the rules. It can eliminate questions of conflicts of interest that exist when stakeholders in the community also act as crucial decision makers. Most importantly, it will result in a legacy of development where applicants, such as this one here, and the community are able to build a sense of engagement where a win-win is achievable. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Chris.
Irene Derman?
Good evening.
Welcome.
My name is Irene Derman, and I've owned a home in Nordic Valley for just under 10 years. I love the valley and our community. However, we are missing some amenities which I would like to see come to fruition. And from everything I've read about the planned development, the Eden Crossing plans do cover all of this. Now, growth is going to happen. It's the natural order of things. Nothing stays the same. Statistically, the state of Utah has the highest birth rate in the country and are in the top 3 of in-migration to Utah. Also, something else to consider. Should Utah be the state that has chosen to host the Winter Olympics, while a decade from now, the Eden Crossing proposed development is not just smart, it's sensible. It confronts what lies ahead. It predicts smartly. It's not just now, but the expansiveness of our upcoming future. It encompasses what the valley and this community will require to sustain its growth, and provides increased housing, which is in short supply. And with the state growing so rapidly, it is a vital need. Personally, with no longer being allowed to approve short-term rentals, I need to be able to refer friends and guests that previously rented my home and love it here to a hotel in our valley rather than elsewhere. Frankly, driving is a waste of time and resources and creates more traffic. The Eden Crossing plan will reduce traffic impact on Ogden Canyon. The other growth that I would support and should be taking place are the amenities that we are currently missing. A larger market or markets, plural if you like, restaurants, coffee shops, a spa, retail stores, and boutiques, and to be able to support a culture for the arts, which is another missing piece in our valley. I'm delighted with the plan of the proposed traffic routes and a walkable Main Street, where we can enjoy all that it will have to offer in the future, as well as the ability to have markets and festivals. I live next to Osprey Ranch, and I appreciate the low-density development that has taken place there. It is a good example of the general plan working. That we have local developers proposing these improvements to provide better amenities and opportunities for our community. It's a plus, it's a big plus. These are people that understand our valley and its needs. As a final summary, by concentrating, okay, thank you for listening.
Thank you for being here. Chris.
Hugh Schaum? Schaum?
Commissioners, good to be with you. Hugh Schaum, 2497 North Highway 166, Eden, Utah. First off, Commissioners, I personally want to thank the Ogden Valley Planning Commission, Commissioner Montgomery, Barber, Wampler, Torman, and Schuman. On May 23rd, they denied the applicant's request for a street regulating plan. Why did they do that? Well, I think we've heard tonight. It didn't fit the general plan. Fast forward, I have met with each one of you three multiple times, and I personally want to thank you both, all of you. I've met with you, Commissioner Bolos, Commissioner Four, and Commissioner Harvey. And in fact, Commissioner Harvey even called me and said, Hugh, I'd like you to go with me and ride, and we'll meet with Mr. Lewis and Mr. Hill. And we did that day. And I can't thank you enough, Jim, for doing that. With that being said, I'm opposed to the street regulating plan because as of now, I'm the only person that lives right next door to that. There's not one other person. And I will tell you that that has, by having that go in, it's not going to affect the traffic in Ogden Canyon. It won't at all. I will say this, that it's outside the general plan. It was never intended to be like that. That's a farm. It's a floodplain. We've heard this over and over again already talked about, and I'm opposed to that. But what does it do to my neighbors? On May 23rd, we heard from Charlie Ewert when asked by the Ogden Valley Planning Commission, what will it do to Highway 166? I live on Highway 166, and his reply was, well, we're going to have to expand it. Well, guess what's going to happen? Somebody's going to lose their house. Somebody loses their farm. Why? Just say no. And that's all that I've asked of each one of you, is honor our servants that serve our valley, the Ogden Valley Planning Commission. I fast forward. I go to November 14th. On the rezone, that came up again. They thought about it. They had courage, and they said no. I respect them, and I would ask you to respect that wish just like you would, because actually you all appointed them. It wasn't me. I didn't appoint them. I'm just a citizen that they stood up and knew what was right. I also want to talk about this. I think it's real important. The applicant, just so you know, there's the applicant had approved last year the exchange up by Wolf Creek. There's a hotel and housing area that's already been approved. There's ample housing within the valley. There is. There absolutely is. I want to talk a little bit about legacy. You know, I shared this about 2 weeks ago. I looked out my window, and it was pitch black. And that blackness was because there was nothing that was up yet. We had beautiful dark sky. This will violate the dark sky ordinance, and I want you to consider it tonight and say no. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Cass Butler.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Cass Butler.
Welcome.
I'm here on behalf of Orlif Opikins, a long-term developer of property up in the Ogden Valley, Eagle Ridge. I've come as his representative and as his attorney. Orlif is in support of this proposal, and I'd like to address a couple of issues. There's been concern expressed about spot zoning. I point out that Commissioner Jeff Burton addressed that in his remarks. He felt this proposal would prevent prevent sprawl by concentrating a development in areas where there is sufficient infrastructure to support such a development. I also remind the commissioners of the plan statement that Ogden Valley community desires physical development to complement, not overwhelm, or compete with the rural character of the valley. I'd suggest that this proposal does not overwhelm, and it is consistent with the plan. And finally, on behalf of Orlif, I want to thank the commissioners for the careful attention they're paying to this issue, as well as the good citizens that are here expressing their concerns, and appreciate your time. I'd like to defer my remaining time to Brent Bateman.
Got it. Brent?
Thank you, and thank you for letting me have this opportunity just to take out this last minute. I said at the beginning that I was here to make sure that the law gets followed, and that's why I've gotten up here the second time. I know both Mr. Noel and Mr. Frohr, and they are accomplished and talented attorneys who I respect greatly. But I want to comment on a couple of things that they said. First of all, as Cass mentioned, spot zoning was mentioned. Just need to make it clear. The spot zoning is not illegal. As a matter of fact, it's perfectly legal, and as a matter of fact, it happens every day. Spot zoning is a pejorative term for legislative development agreements. Okay, you enter in a development agreement, that development agreement applies to one area, and that becomes the legislation for that area. Okay. Secondly, I'd like to just point out that the general plan is a plan. It's a plan. Okay. The location of the circle, the statements that are in there, they're a guide, okay? Your job is to follow, is to do what's best for this county. And it's especially true because, as Mr. Noel said, you know, doing this yay, nay, yay, nay, yay, nay thing, he's concerned that that gives the impression that the county is divided. Well, a meeting where everyone comes up and against also gives a false impression, okay? This is not a vote. There are people here who are in favor of this. Those people deserve to get heard as well. And your job is not to necessarily say more people are more loud on one side or the other. Your job is to say what's best for the community long term. Thanks.
Thank you. Chris?
Kelly Booth.
On May 23rd, 2023, the Ogden Valley Planning Commission voted a denial recommendation to the County Commission. They said, in terms of the street regulating plan and form-based zone, they said the amendments are not supported by the general plan. The area is not ready for the proposed changes. It was a 5-2 vote. On November 14th, again, it was a denial recommendation for the rezone of AV3 property to form-base. This was within 6 months. They've had working sessions and they've had meetings. In the meeting on November 14th, Charlie Ewert stated publicly that this rezone proposal does not follow the general plan as currently written. That is why the applicant was requesting an amendment to the zone. This lawyer here just said a general plan is a guide. Well, let's use it. We spent a lot of money on it. We spent a lot of time. I think it's interesting, too, to repeat that the denial was based on logic, it was based on common sense, and principles outlined in the general plan. These are appointed officials, appointed by the commissioner. And additionally, we haven't heard one thing, any any rezone requires an environmental impact study, right? We should look at what it's doing for the environment. Tina talked about the wetlands. We haven't heard how their historic irrigation ditches are going to be preserved and protected when these streets get put in. We haven't heard how the county is going to mitigate and keep the displaced water from flooding residents' homes and basements. I want to talk to Huntsville has a hotel. Who was looking for a hotel? Huntsville has one. Eden had one. It actually was owned by the developers who's proposing this, and at one point owned by him, and guess what? It went out of business. We've had a hotel in Eden. Knowing, and then I wanted to bring up another issue, knowing incorporation will soon be on the ballot. It would be reckless for the county commission to move forward with such a big decision. This is an important matter. This matters. It is a pivotal moment for Ogden Valley. It cannot be taken lightly. We ask that you go through the proper procedures and the proper processes. It will have ripple effects. I have with me a petition of 3,000 names and letters for those who were denied the opportunity to speak during this format. I would ask everyone who signed this petition who is present to please stand.
No, we're not going to allow that.
Okay. Well, here's an easy guess.
You can leave the petition.
They're wearing red.
Okay.
So my guess is if they're wearing red, they have done it. As represented to the public, we ask you to deny the street regulating plan and rezone. And in the meantime, create a process for updating the Ogden General Plan that involves public support,
Thank you.
addresses TDRs, and is transparent from start to finish.
Next.
Jeff Barber.
So this is under a speaking in favor of the petition, the ordinance, is that correct? So you're here to speak in favor?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
So, as you all know, I am a current member of the Ogden Valley Planning Commission. I voted no twice on this matter. I voted no not because I'm not in favor of this proposal or this project or any other project. I think careful deliberation was given by the Planning Commission twice. In my case, and I only speak for myself, I gave it very careful consideration, and I would like to see this project be successful because growth is going to happen. It needs to happen well. Is this the greatest project? I don't know. Is it the worst? I don't know that either. But if a project like this is going to go forward, I'd like to be successful. My concern is there is something that's going to keep this project from being successful. And I think this project is very much linked to the Ogden Valley General Plan as well. So we've heard it tonight referenced that this plan is going to make the Ogden Valley General Plan successful. The two are definitely linked, and for this project to be successful, the plan has to be successful. And it won't be the way the current TDR process is written into code. And just don't take my word for it. If you really dig deep and drill down, there are inherent flaws with the way the county has taken what's written in the general plan with respect to TDRs. We've heard a few comments tonight. But I think if you really want this project to be successful, which I do, there needs to be the time taken for that TDR process to be understood. You just can't look at the paper right now, the code, and say we have a TDR process, it's going to work. It's not going to work. The folks who put in all the time and effort to create the general plan wrote specific things in that plan that are not in the code today. Those were very well thought out, specific key points that are not in the plan. And I do think whoever wants this project to be successful, and I'm one of those folks, before it can be, you have to step back and fix the TDR process so that the development rights that move into these density zones are the right development rights. Right now, none have moved. None have changed hands. There is no valuation. It's not going to work. So if you want success in this or any other project, you have to do that first, not after the fact. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris.
Commissioners, we've reached the point where we've heard 10 against and 10 for. There are some additional names on the list. There are 7 who wish to speak against and 2 for. But we've heard from 10 speakers on both sides.
All right, well, without objection, I'm going to hear those 7. So we had 2 that would speak for.
Yes, 7 against and 2 for.
Name those 2.
So the 2 for are Bruce Warburton and Seth Bailey.
Okay. Anyone else that is here in the audience would like to speak for besides those 2 people, raise your hand. We'll put you on the list. All right, so we'll have 2 speak for that, and we have 5 against. Did you tell me?
7.
7. Okay. So let's start with the against. We'll hear all 7 people.
Talia Matheson?
You okay with that?
I'm Talia Matheson. I just submitted a whole bunch of reasons why this development didn't even get a good start. There's numerous pages right there of things that the developer is missing in the application for a rezone. And I'm going to turn my time to Dave Hansen.
Commissioners, that's what daughters do for you. I'm Dr. David Hansen. I have a BS, MS, and PhD in civil engineering. I sold 2.5 years ago my interest in the engineering firm Hansen, Allen & Luce, and my specialty over 40 years of engineering has been surface and groundwater development. I wish to make it known that I have the following concerns about the planned and future developments in Ogden Valley, hereafter referred to as OV. I request that you listen to and take note of the strong voice of the people who have elected you to office. The planned developments for which we are here today do not conform nor follow the OV general plan. A final study to determine the feasibility of incorporating Eden and Liberty is planned to be released on December 7th, 2 days from now. The study is being completed mostly due to the lack of consideration OV residents feel that they have received from this commission. In my opinion, many of the decisions of the commission have gone against the majority interests of residents who actually live in OV. Little consideration should be given to comments made by those who do not live in Ogden Valley or anywhere near these proposed developments. As I said, I'm a civil engineer. I have assisted with the feasibility investigation of many developments, including water resource evaluations. I understand development will come to this valley, including but it must come responsibly, not as large-scale developments that are not in conformance with the existing plan. One that creates new retail development that is surrounded by agriculture and residential zones, and one that adds to the already struggling businesses that fight to keep their doors open. Changing the rezoning process will not only make it easier for Eden Crossing to be approved, but will have impacts across the valley and open the way to similar type developments in both Eden, Liberty, and beyond against the desires of the community. Do not make OV a new Park City or Sun Valley. It's already a recreation hotspot for many of these factors. We have lake recreation, 3 ski resorts, HV recreation opportunities, biking, hiking opportunities throughout the valley, camping, hiking, biking, snowshoeing, cross-country skiing opportunities in North Fork. This commission was elected to represent the interests of the public. The interests of OV are different than communities west of the Wasatch Range, and we request that you properly represent OV in your decisions for the valley. Please say no to the road changes, the road plans, changes in the methods of rezoning, no to Eden Crossing as currently proposed. All developments must be in conformance with the plan. Thank you.
Chris, let's go with one of the...
Bruce Warburton?
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Bruce Warburton, and I live in Huntsville, unincorporated area of Weber County. And I am for the development. I'm a property rights advocate, And I think that if he's following the law and he's obeying the rules, he has the right to do what he wants with his land. I think that the development is good for the valley. All the arguments and opinions that I've heard tonight, most of them are coming with technicalities that this hasn't been done and this hasn't been done. Well, these things can be done. You know, the development agreement between you and the developer, those things can be handled and it can be done right. They can do it to where there is no water. They can control the water and put it in where it needs to be. They can create these solutions to the problems that people are complaining about. So I'm in for this. I think it would be a great thing for our valley. Thank you.
Chris, go ahead.
Paula Wilden.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Paula Heward Wilden. I reside at 2970 North Wolf Creek Drive, Eden. I was born and raised in Ogden Valley, 37 years. I have seen most of the development in the valley. I am not against development. However, I do support legal and smart growth. Why are we rushing this when we have an opportunity to keep the valley special, to offer the world our Garden of Eden? And what about my property rights? In February of 2023, I received a call from my mother, Barbara Heward, who while I was out of town was staying with my grandmother at the said residence. She called me asking if I was aware of anything happening in the field out back. My response was, it's February of the worst winter we've had in 20 years. I would know. No, there shouldn't be anything happening in the field. Little did I know that our field was our fence was being ripped out by accident. A fence that my family has owned since 1947. Quite the 642.0 foot accident. My mom went out to the workers and told them to stop, but they wouldn't. We received farm equipment damage, loss of fencing, cistern damage, my dog run was completely destroyed, and dozens of our trees were ripped out. So I retained legal counsel. I didn't announce or share my family's farm situation for 7 months until I started reading posts online promoting the development and how these projects were being handled seamlessly, flawlessly. Because of my speaking out, I was paid a very aggressive visit to my home on September 25th, 2023, where I was berated on my front porch the day after the original article of the farm was published in the newspaper. I was home alone. As my husband was out fighting wildfires in Texas, he watched the conversation unfold from our cameras on our home. I was threatened with a lawsuit, even though the perpetrator was denying any involvement. A police report, case file number 23 WC 34728, was filed, as I should not fear for myself or my children at my home, but I do. Then, on October 28th, I received a call from my wonderful neighbor asking if I was missing signs, some signs that were posted on my fence. A man affiliated with the applicant was caught red-handed stealing people's signs right off their property. 12 counts of theft and 12 counts of trespass were filed, case file number 23 WC 39181. I come here today to speak for all of those who have been silenced, the people whose careers would be affected, the farmers who are unable to attend, the people my own age who are at work or raising families who can't be here. Why should I or we need legal representation to show you what is happening is not right? You have a fiduciary obligation in the elected position you accepted, voted into by the people, to watch and protect the people. Thank you.
Thank you. No applause.
Seth Bailey.
Good evening. My name is Seth Bailey.
Welcome.
I'm a property owner and a business owner in Eden. And like so many others, my love for Eden started with its spectacular mountain scenery and vast amount of open spaces. Ogden Valley has been a hidden gem. I bought in Eden because my belief is that it can continue to be a gem, despite not being as hidden anymore. Growth is the only evidence of life. A thoughtful leadership group in 2016 foresaw just how much life would be born in the Ogden Valley. When I learned about the general plan that was adopted and what it set out to balance and preserve, I was even more convinced that the valley would remain as a gem. It laid out in values and principles a guidebook of preserving open spaces, prioritizing view sheds, and clustering growth. And now we are here ready to execute and guided by those values and vision. And nowhere in that general plan does it say don't execute. Eden Crossings is just one of the many projects to come to breathe life into the valley. And from what I've seen, it seems to be a bullseye in supporting this general plan. And as the Ogden Valley general plan moves from paper to performance, Eden Crossings with a local developer is a great way to start the engine and begin performing under the guidance of the general plan. Appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thank you.
Trish Painter.
I deferred my time to Steve Nolan.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Commissioners, I appreciate Mr. Bateman's comments, but I'm not worried about any illusions of what it appears to be. What I'm concerned about is the rules that have been placed upon this meeting and under the justification of efficiency. I think when we have such impactful decisions to make, we shouldn't give way to efficiency. We should give way to voice and inclusion and letting the public be able to express its concerns to you. I think it would actually be a violation of this commission's duty to approve these two proposals tonight without, at the very least, addressing the TDR issue. It is just a problem. It just is. You may not agree so publicly, but I think privately you would. It's a problem, and it has to be fixed before we even go forward. I'm a property right proponent. I've represented many to defend their property rights and my own, but they're not unlimited, as was explained earlier by another speaker. We have to learn to get along with each other as we use our property. Spot zoning, I agree, is not always illegal, but it's usually dumb, and it doesn't make sense. And we need to be careful whenever there's a potential for spot zoning or the effects of any type of zoning that could give rise to those issues. The architectural designs, or at least some of those that might be proposed, I have to wonder if they are consistent with what was originally proposed by this body, or at least the planning department, to the Planning Commission back in October, when it said that the proposed Eden Village mixed-use zone requires street front buildings to have a facade that has specific architecture, materials, and colors. The Old Town Eden area will have street front facades with architecture, materials, and colors that resemble Western Main Street buildings from the 1890s to the early 1910s. Currently, the blacksmith shop and the general store meet these requirements with either brick or wood fronts. I don't know exactly what's being proposed there, but I don't know that it is consistent with that original proposal. I will just end with, if this meeting happens to last well into the evening, so be it. It may be uncomfortable to have to listen to dissent, but it's been my experience that when someone approaches these issues with passion or emotion or even some anger, it's often because they're not being listened to. And I ask this body to please listen to the Valley residents when addressing these proposals. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Chad Booth.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know who that is. Maybe you know.
Chad Booth, Eden, Utah. I come on behalf of a group of the original brains behind the general plan and some of the original people who were on the gym committee at the time. And I'll say their names at the end. Having spent collectively hundreds of hours of input into the development of multiple parts of Weber County ordinances, including the general plan, we believe the Eden Crossing development should not be approved in its current form. We would like to point to 4 reasons for that opinion. As has often been stated, one of the core goals of the general plan was to cluster high density, develop and leave open space wherever possible. Eden Crossing does not do that. Rather than achieving that goal, the current Eden Crossing plan injects high density commercial parcels and high density housing into AV3 areas that are currently open spaces, agricultural and low density residential areas. Eden Crossing will be a freestanding commercial development inserted into and surrounded by agricultural and residential properties. The public input into the general plan included the idea that the commercial areas would be clustered and contiguous. There was much sentiment against having multiple separated commercial enterprises with, for example, a restaurant on one corner, gas station on another, a market on another, with open lands or residential areas in between. The developers of the Eden Crossing are competing unfairly with commercial property owners and businesses currently located near the 4-way stop. The Eden Crossing developers purchased property that is zoned AV3. The commercial zones surrounding the 4-way stop have been in place for decades. For years, many businesses and landowners have paid commercial rates to buy or rent commercial properties in these commercial areas, and they have also paid commercial property taxes. All these commercial enterprises will be penalized if Eden Crossing is allowed to turn land that is now zoned AV3 into commercial property. The Eden Crossing developers will unfairly profit from the marked increase in the value of each acre when their residential and agricultural AV3 land is turned into commercial property. And finally, the Ogden Valley Planning Commission has twice recommended against the current Eden Crossing development. In previous years, early 2000s, the members of the OVPC were elected in open public elections. Currently, members in the OVPC are appointed and approved by the Weber County Commissioners. We believe the Weber County Commissioners should support and trust the decisions of their OVPC and should vote to not approve the current Eden Crossing development. Sincerely, Lee Shushman, Greg Booth, Brian Smith, Kim Wheatley, and Kirk Langford. Thank you.
Ryan Matheson.
Next. Go to the next one, Chris, if is Ryan coming?
Okay.
I'll defer to Steve Newell.
Members of the commission, one concern I have is this idea that there's a need for certain amenities. And while that may be true for some, I think that the problem with that logic or that idea is that I don't think it's too far out of line to suggest that many residents of the valley moved to the valley and live in the valley specifically and expressly because of its lack of amenities. We're not there so that we can have shops and stores down the street from where we live. Now, it's not about not in my backyard. It's not about never where I live. But it is about being careful. And the fact that the valley lacks some amenities is not a reason to stuff them into the valley. I think that it has been carefully and artfully and articulately stated, well stated, that right now I think we've got the cart before the horse. And I think it's not an understatement, or an overstatement rather, to say that there's been some examples of that we've seen on the ground where action is taken without really having everything in place. And I think this is a real opportunity for this commission to listen to the residents of the valley, to not just hear what we have to say, but to listen. And to go back to that general plan and to go back and look at what does this rezone really comply with it and its spirit when we have commercial property already available in certain areas. Do we really need to take a big 20-acre parcel, cut it in half and stick some inside the zone and some outside of it to accommodate the vision of an artificial Main Street? I respectfully submit that the answer to that question should be no. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin Parson?
Thank you, Commissioners. Kevin Parson.
Welcome.
I live in Liberty. I was on the commission, or the planning commission, and I helped with the general plan. And this totally flies in the face of the general plan. It flies in the face of property rights, of people who've spent a lot of money and a lot of time, buying commercial property, or looking at a piece of property that they're going to build a home on, live in, hopefully for the rest of their life, and then have the rug pulled out from underneath them because of not just a zone change, but like a drastic zone change. I quit going to these meetings because I felt like they didn't matter anymore. I felt like everything I did, the 8 years that I spent, didn't matter. So I hope it matters to these guys. I hope you take their recommendation. Because if you don't, it flies in the face of public trust. It flies in the face of everything on the wall behind you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Elizabeth Brunker?
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Brunker. I live at 2400 North, Highway 166. I am 3 houses east of where this is going to go. So I am against changing the road. I mean, one thing is it's going to, if they widen the road in front of my house, it's going to take part of my property out of there. Also, if they decide that they want to do a roundabout or a 4-way stop, whatever they're doing, are we making sure that farm equipment, big massive things can get through there? We are still a farming community. So I want to, make sure that that is a possibility, that we're considering that when we're changing roads and putting them through people's property and all of that. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Commissioners, we've heard from everyone whose names appear on this list.
Thank you. Okay, well, we said 5 to 7. We're close to it. What do we have left? If there's one additional person that would like to, hasn't been heard, that feel they want to come before and say something that hasn't been said, we're happy to hear it. Please come up. This will be our last person. Go ahead.
My name's Robert Fuller. I live on 5900 East in Eden, Utah. Let me tell you what's probably the most concerning element of this whole process. 10 speakers in favor of the proposal, 10 speakers against it. You might want to revisit Toone versus Weber County, where they said, notice and a reasonable opportunity to be heard is the heart of procedural fairness. If you had to sit here for a week and listen to what people want to say about their community you're developing, that would be the proper approach. Back to the rezone, I think there's 3 reasons you might want to consider the possibility of leaving the valley primarily AV3 and S1 right now. 3 reasons. Number 1, you haven't finished the projects that have been started up there. You daylight the storm drain from Wolf Creek down into the Eden irrigation system. Just this year, similar to 2017, when 2 big subdivisions there were flooding, primarily one subdivision, there was over 9 inches of water on the road. You feverishly brought up the Weber County track hose to clean out the Lindsay ditch to use as a storm drain, which is inappropriate. The point is, you might want to finish the infrastructure for the existing subdivisions before you start into this unique concept with a very dense subdivision. So that would be a reason to table virtually all subdivision requests for dense situations because the county hasn't kept up with the infrastructure that's needed for what we already have up there. That's going back to the 1 acre and the cluster subdivision, and you know which subdivision I'm talking about that has the flooding problems. You need to get the flood zone, you need to get the flood water down to Pine View, and so one option would be do not rezone anything other than AV3 and S1 until the storm drain is completed. The second point is there's been a substantial change in our economy. There's been a quick development up there. You might want to let the people revisit the general plan before you make any substantial changes. And third, it is fundamentally unfair how you're considering letting a subdivision in Eden have lots with maybe 3 acres per unit, if I'm reading it properly. Where we live on the north shore of Pine View, we need 200,000 square feet for one building permit. 200,000, 5 acres, 300 feet of frontage for one building permit. You're proposing something up there that, if I'm reading it correctly, that there might be a possibility of 1 unit per 3,000 square feet. So in other words, a 70-to-1 ratio. How do you get, we can put one house on 5 acres where they can put 14 homes on 1 acre. A 70-to-1 ratio is fundamentally unfair, and if you're the advocates of these property rights, you should think about that. And the point would be, just leave it AV3 and S1 until the community has time to revisit our general plan, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just for your information, we actually had 5 or 6 more, gave the opportunity tonight, Robert, so I just want to make sure
No,
the
I
record's
appreciate
straight.
it. That's it. But, you know, we should have the opportunity to speak for everybody who wants to speak instead of rushing in here. So appreciate it, Commissioner.
Okay,
Thank you.
well, we said 5 to 7, and we're extending that for a number of people. So I saw one person in the back of the room. Please come up. Welcome. Please give us your name.
My name is Mayur Rajvaidya, and everybody calls me Dragonfly. So,
Okay.
Thank you for providing me an opportunity to come here and speak. I was just wondering, what's going to happen after the density increase, right? We have only 2 or 3 ways to get out of the valley, and one of them is Ogden Canyon, which is most popular, right? And it is kind of very narrow. So when the density is going to increase, it is going to put a lot of pressure on that Ogden Valley, and I don't know if there is a plan to broaden it or do something about it, because the another way to get out of the valley is via that Mountain Green area. So that's kind of risky, dangerous. So just wanted to consider the fact after the aftermath of this development. That's about it.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate being here. All right, with that, Commissioners, it is 6:58. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn our public hearing and go back to the public meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, we're back in a public meeting to take action on the public hearing that we just had. We'll start with C2, request for approval of an ordinance would be 2023-36 to amend the street regulating plan for Newtown Eden and Old Town Eden and proposed amendments to the architectural theme requirements and standards of the form-based zone to allow for a wider range of style options. Commissioners, back to you.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Bolos.
I'm not going to speak to the architectural theme requirements and standards. It doesn't seem like that's been an issue that I've read about or heard about in my phone conversations and my personal conversations. So I'll move to the street regulating plan. A comment that I made in one of our work sessions earlier this year has been referenced to me several times, and that is when the applicant was here and looking for a rezone, we were presented with the proposed changes to the street regulating plan. And at that point in time, I was reading the text of the general plan, and the concept of villages, the circles on the map, which are for reference, and one of the notes says the village areas are shown as a 1/4 mile radius circles centered on each area. For these purposes, the study areas are not intended as growth. They're clearly identified, and I felt like this proposal fell within that radius, at least somewhat, but the street regulating plan did not address that, and I told the planners at that time that I didn't feel comfortable with the text of the general plan not being reflected in that street regulating map. In the general plan, it says maps are provided for reference throughout the general plan, and in the event a provision of the general plan text conflicts with the information provided in a map, the text provision controls. So I looked at that comment, and I do feel that this intersection and the immediate surrounding property falls within what I would consider the new town Eden Village. And I appreciate the planning department and their efforts to propose an amendment to that map that would reflect that village. And I won't speak to the rezone, but those are my thoughts on the street regulating plan.
Okay, Commissioner Harvey?
I'd like to step back even further.
Go ahead.
We're at the foundation. I'd like to go to the footing. And Charlie, I'm going to ask you to go to the lectern, please. There's been a lot of reference tonight with regards to the master plan. I remember hearing when I first came here 7 years ago that the people of the Ogden Upper Valley let me just why was a master plan created?
Aside from a requirement to have a general plan or a master plan in state code in order to have zoning, aside from that, the general plan was revisited in 2016 because it had been quite some time since we had done planning efforts in the valley. We had something done in 2005. It was a recreation element, but that recreation element didn't fully encompass the potential build-out of the Ogden Valley. In fact, a lot of the past planning documents failed to fully understand what existing zoning can potentially do in the valley at full build-out. And so in 2016, it seemed appropriate to go back to the public and ask if the existing zones are allowed to do what they're currently doing and what they will do given economic vitality, is that what you guys want to see in your valley? And the overwhelming response from the valley public was no, we don't want to see what existing zoning is doing. And so at that point, we had to figure out, well, now what? It was pretty clear at that time that new development wasn't favored regardless, whether it be under existing zoning or under new types of zoning or under any new type of general plan. But it was also pretty clear at that time, both from the county commission of the time as well as members of the public, that a mass down zone was not appealing either. That mass down zone happened, one happened in 1998, took a third of the property values, potentially, of property owners in the valley, going from one dwelling unit to the acre to one dwelling unit to the acre to one dwelling unit to 3 acres. So with that in mind, we knew we had to do something, and so did the public. At least the public who were informed and involved in the process knew we had to do something. Otherwise, we were going to get one dwelling unit spread out every 3 acres across the valley floor. So that's why they didn't like that appearance. They called it at that time the measle map.
The measle map,
measle
because
map.
there would be residences all over the whole valley, not including the mountain slope, but on
That's right.
the whole valley, the density there. And during that time that I remember is they created receiving areas. Is that right? So if they didn't decide to put a dwelling every 3 acres, they could put it in a receiving area. that was referred to by one of the, I listened very carefully, but it had a different, but it's this, that's the same thing. It's a receiving area.
That's right.
How many receiving areas are there, and where are they?
So the
okay, great. Go ahead with that.
So the general plan identifies 8 receiving areas across the valley floor. And the reason why those areas are identified in the general plan is because they currently have some element of commercial in them at this time. Or they are, for example, the Snow Basin intersection at the bottom of Trappers Loop and Highway 39. So they were areas that were, we had reasonable anticipation that development would occur there, either by past development action and building, or by development agreement that already existed in place.
And those receiving areas are, again, those 8 receiving areas are where?
Oh, so we've got Nordic Valley, we've got Liberty, we've got Wolf Creek, we've got Newtown Eden, Old Town Eden, East Huntsville, which isn't far East Huntsville, it's just right on the periphery of Huntsville. We've got the Snow Basin intersection, which is Trappers Loop and 39. And then there's Old Snow Basin Road and Highway 39 as well.
Why were those receiving areas created?
To receive the density, to receive the transfers that could come in.
Go
ahead, sorry.
The people that, this master plan, it was supported by the community back in 2016-17?
That's correct.
Including those receiving areas?
That's correct.
I remember it was a very, some of the same statements made this evening. We don't listen to the people. Said we should do this, and so we adopted those master plan, that master plan, as I remember, because I remember some of the people. I think Mr. Brown spoke about the GEM committee. Many of them spoke at that meeting and said that we've been working 10 years on this. Please don't deny that. So, and that makes sense. It was probably a little more than that based on that 2005 study you said. This was, I think, adopted in the first quarter or second quarter of 2017 when it was there. So what in a receiving area, I'm going to get a little more technical here because this, pardon me, Mr. Chair, Madam Commissioner, if I can just keep going for a minute. I'd like to know, what are the property rights associated in a receiving area?
How do you mean?
What rights are there? What property rights are, what type of zoning? How many people, what can go in there?
Gotcha. So a receiving area, first and foremost, in order to be considered a receiving area, has to be zoned for that receiving area. So a form-based zone currently is the only type of zone other than resort zone, DRR1 zone, that can be a receiving area. So that's number one. But in those hypothetical receiving areas where the circles are on the map, right now you've got a combination of different types of zoning. So you could do either, in this case, AB3, or you could do commercial, just depending on what part of that circle that your property is in.
Thank you.
Commissioner Harvey, can I ask a follow-up question? Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, please.
While we're on the topic. When we looked at the map, there was another zone to the east of this proposed one that's been rezoned. Did that receive density? Was that a receiving area?
It is a receiving area now, and it will receive density at the time of development.
Okay, thanks.
Continue on.
No, I remember that, and I remember that. Thank you. And so, what density is associated with the receiving area? Not just Newtown or Old Town or Liberty or Old Snow Basin Road. What type of density is associated with that?
It depends on the street regulating plan. So if a property is rezoned to the form-based zone, at that point, and not before then, the street regulating plan becomes applicable to that property. And if that property has commercial streets, multifamily streets, vehicle-oriented streets assigned to that property, then they could potentially get those kinds of development potential or densities. The maximum density potential is going to be based on what the market can produce and how many TDRs can be moved.
If we're very successful at implementing the general plan and saving all open spaces, we're going to have to find a spot to put a remaining 6,000 dwelling units at least. And so if we're looking at maximizing that and moving them all into the villages, we're looking at probably close to somewhere between 15 and 20 units to the acre, which is the same density that the CVR1 zone is that currently exists in the valley.
I think, and I don't mean to be leading at all, but
No, please lead me.
you know, sorry, Mr. Chair, but also Mr. Fuller, who spoke last. I haven't been going up to the valley as I don't think, with all due respect, as long as the two of you had, but I have been going up there since the 70s, and I remember. I remember farms on all four corners of what we would now call the four-way stop, or where the Maverick is. I'm seeing Mr. Pack nod his head, and so at one time, is it safe, as I try to understand this, is it safe to understand that all four corners were once AV3 or some form of agriculture? They were somebody's farm a long time ago.
Yeah, very, very likely. I haven't studied the oldest of zoning maps for the valley. I know that commercial did exist in Newtown Eden for some time. I can't tell you exactly how much time, but yes, if you go back far enough, it was just either agriculture or nature.
Well, I'm getting somewhere because years ago I remember trying to get gas up there, and I couldn't find fuel anywhere up there. They had gas at Chris's, but I don't remember some of the other fuel stations. I remember the creation of the junior high school, Snowcrest Junior High School. I wasn't at that public meeting. I remember when the grocery market came. I remember when the Maverick came in my lifetime. I remember when the 2002 Olympics were awarded and what that did. And I think I saw quite a few people come as a result of that. There was a distinct number of people difference based on after the Olympics were awarded. And the recent decision, we've all heard about the 2034, seems to be fairly imminent. I wonder what is that's going to help. Thanks. Some things are convenient and some things are not. Listen, many of the people here in the room, you've been effective in your communication, and I noticed the hands go up, and yet you were respectful in your presentations. But it seems some of these things came by way of convenience, and some are accepted, some are not. I would hope those things that people who moved up there and didn't want those types of things, I mean, it sounds silly, but I hope they passed by the Mavericks or they didn't send their kids to those schools, because those are things that are denoting growth in that valley. I mean, as silly as that sounds, those are all things that came as a result of growth. I know the first Valley Elementary was built in about 1940, if I remember correctly. I remember when we built the library up there. But it's come a little bit as growth has come. So another thing that's recently come, and most people know, is, and we should celebrate the fact that the Powder Mountain was recently named by Ski Magazine the largest periodical, ski periodical in the world. Powder Mountain was listed number 1, and Snow Basin was listed number 2. That didn't happen at this level here. So I find those two things interesting as it relates to growth. I don't have any more comments pertaining to that right now.
Okay.
Just with all due respect, I've tried to be respectful here, and I listened intently when people made comments at the lectern, And I'd really appreciate not having catcalls. If I am just trying to speak my mind, I'm trying to understand. I hope that I could get the same respect back. Thank you.
Hold on one second, I got a question for, so Charlie, there were some comments made about our TDR ordinance not being successful or not an ordinance that promotes what was intended, which is to take density off of the hillsides that were buildable, the valley floor, and transfer those into the areas that you just described, which are receiving areas. What, do you have a comment to that? Because if you look at some of the projects we've had, has taken, my recollection, over 100 or so possible homes on the hillside and holding those in really abeyance until there's a development they can place them to, which is a village area. So can you tell us why the TDR ordinance may not be working? 'Cause I'm still confused.
So it's a question of values. It's a question of, are you okay with preserving open spaces now in areas that are even hard to develop so that they stay preserved for the future? Or would you rather see areas that are easier to develop be preserved because the harder spots, that's going to be somebody else's problem? That it comes down to that question. And right now, the TDR ordinance is designed to treat every development right as equal, even though I agree with Commissioner Barber that they're not equal. It's a lot easier to develop on a farm, open farm field, than it is to develop on a hillside. But it doesn't mean that development on the hillside won't occur. It might occur sooner, it might occur later. It really just depends on the financial circumstances of the landowner. So with the previous TDRs that have occurred, none have been traded on the open market that I'm aware of. And that is problematic. And I don't think that's a problem of lack of desire. I think that's a problem of lack of a market. And you're not going to get a market going unless you have a supply.
Yeah, and I would say this, I think the TDRs will be market driven. That's the intent.
That's right.
If you look at the legislation passed in this state and other states, TDRs are always driven by the market, not by government.
That's right.
So
I don't think a TDR program will work if we're just focused on individual landowners who have farmland, only them transferring their TDRs. It's not possible to make that work, because you're talking about trading one dwelling unit per 3 acres for a 15 to 2,000 square foot townhome flat. It doesn't pencil, and it won't pencil. The farmers know that. The developers know that. And so when you're trying to marry the two together, the developer's looking for a TDR at 5,000 to 10,000 apiece, and the farmer's looking to sell a TDR at 30,000 to 50,000 apiece. And there is some math, there's some scientific math that goes into determining that value, but they're not far off from what their expectations are.
Commissioner Bullis, you had a comment?
Yeah, I did have a question for you, Charlie. Back to the street regulating plan. I had some conversations regarding existing commercial, that's kitty corner from this proposal. And can you clarify for me the streets that have been eliminated on the new proposal, is there currently development along those proposed streets?
No, the streets that are eliminated from the street regulating plan don't exist yet. So the dashed lines on the plan are streets that aren't in place yet. So we definitely didn't want to cause any problems for existing landowners who are on existing streets with certain designations.
Okay.
All right, commissioners, back to the ordinance in question, 2023-36.
There's one thing I'd like to add.
Go ahead.
One thing I'd like to add regarding those businesses, Like I said before, I feel like the proposed street regulating plan matches what I would consider the village of Newtown Eden, given that it doesn't impact existing businesses. I want to make sure that that's taken care of. I've had numerous people reach out to me in support of this, which leads me to believe that there are additional commercial properties that can flourish here. I know the infrastructure inadequacies have probably led that to be stifled a bit. But I do believe that the amended street regulating plan does encompass what I consider Newtown Eden, according to the general map, the general circle, the general area, and the intersection, which is a focal point.
Okay, would you like to make a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2023-36.
We have a motion.
I'll second that with a comment. I've had more than 24 people who I've talked to or communicated with that have asked to remain anonymous. And I respect those who had the courage to come up and speak to us for. They're worried. They're worried about being seen or targeted at church or having their businesses targeted. And that's not the people that I know up there. I just wonder why this is. And I remember watching a lot of old movies where the center of town is the intersection. And so for this, that's easy. It's easy for me to be a second on this.
All right. I wanted to make a comment in the notice. Interest of full disclosure, I've been accused unjustly of having financial interest in this, which obviously is not true. Rumors that were spread. But I do have a business that would be impacted, and if what they're saying, this impacts business negatively, then it impacts my property in a negative sense. So I just wanted to make that clear before we take a motion on this, that there is a commercial property. If this, in fact, the comments that this hurts existing commercial, then I'm voting, I may vote to hurt myself. So let that be part of the record. Roll call vote. Craig?
Roll call vote for ordinance 2023-36. Commissioner Bolos?
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Sheriff Rohr?
Aye. Motion carries. Let's go to C3, request for approval of an ordinance 2023-37 to amend the Weber County zoning map, rezoning and possible development agreement on approximately 20 acres of land at approximately 5204 East Highway 166 from AV3 zone to the FB zone, form-based. Go ahead.
You know, there's been a lot of comments as it related to growth up there. One of the things we've pushed back on UDOT, in a study done in 2016, there were 7,600 cars a day at that four-way intersection, and that, they say, that was the last official study, and they say that you could add 3% ever since then. I'm not for a lighted intersection. I'm not for lights there at that intersection. I think a roundabout needs to be there. So as it relates to any type of a development agreement, and it was talked about if this were to pass, an ensuing development agreement would take place. And so I want to bring up some things about that because people talked about traffic here this evening. One of those things is a roundabout. There's a roundabout that's going to be...
Commissioner Harvey, I'm going to ask you to hold until...
hold.
If those people want to leave, please do so in an orderly fashion so the rest that remain here can hear the conversation. We'll wait till you've exited the building. Mike, can you secure that door just so they talk, we don't have the noise coming in? Thank you. Commissioner Harvey, back to you.
Based on UDOT's traffic study, a roundabout's eminent up there, or lights. They'd like to go ahead with lights immediately. I don't agree with that. So I would like to, if this were to go through, I'd like to see the developer put in $500,000. I'd like to see the developer put in $1 million with the pioneering agreement and pay a proportionate share of the entire project. We already have that. We worked on those at Nordic Valley. That's a formula based on proposed density that contributes to the roundabout. Charlie, you got that?
Got it.
I'd also like to see a public...
Commissioner Harvey, would you maybe talk about using a formula rather than a cent dollar amount? Because there'll be other potential players that would also need to contribute to that roundabout.
I'd say up to $1 million. Well, the traffic study, based on that formula, has to do with the formula that we've described as it relates over at Nordic Valley. Charlie, you'd have the details on that. Will you explain that from...
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the Nordic Valley study looked at each intersection leading from the canyon as you exit Highway 39 and enter Highway 158. Looks at every intersection all the way up to the Nordic Valley. And what their intention to do is to essentially estimate the kind of growth that's happening and will continue to happen in the area that is attributable, not attributable to their development, and then the development that is attributable to that development. So they gave some estimations based off of a 20-year build-out horizon for the Nordic Valley development. One of the things that we built into the development agreement for Nordic Valley is a trigger that said that we need to see some updated numbers that are directly associated to Nordic Valley traffic at some point in time. And so that way we can really flesh out how much of the impact on that intersection is actually Nordic Valley traffic. You could certainly do something like that here.
Well, it was also stated that some of the impact, a lot of this impact, and there's a lot of steps that hadn't been gone through.
That's right.
Those would all be done here, but they'd be, if we set that now, they'd all be more measurable.
That's right.
So we could more determine exactly what that impact would be to that roundabout.
That's right. So each development proposal, each subdivision, we can ask for a traffic impact analysis. But if you're looking for the entire impact of the entire project over the life of the project, you're not going to get that on a single traffic impact analysis if you're doing it subdivision by subdivision. So there is a lot of benefit to the community as well as to the county's bottom line to know what that impact is overall at the beginning. And so, yeah, this is a good time to ask that question and ask for a proportionate share from the applicant.
I would. Up to $1 million. As far as a public plaza, like a public plaza, not just a park, but someplace that the public could go, I'd like to see that near, closest to the Highway 166, so that the people who live along Highway 166 aren't looking at a hotel directly across the street. I don't think that's the gateway at that four-way intersection needs to see that. I would say some type of a public plaza, and I would like to see that at approximately 10% of what the total project area is. So if this project area is 20 acres, that'd be 2 acres. And I'd like the development, not the taxpayers, to maintain that public plaza, and also have it include a public easement so that the community could use it. Got another one. STRs, there's been a lot of discussion up in the valley. We listened about STRs. If the hotel's going to go in up there, that's going to count in my mind towards STRs, and so I'd like to reduce the number of STRs for this project by 75%, leaving only just a little bit. I'd like the hotel to be, now I know that the zoning in those areas that are receiving areas, when you push those back off the road, that can also be problematic. Our current plan allows for 4 stories. I'm not for 4 stories. I'm for a maximum of 3 stories. I'd probably be okay with some kind of a rooftop dining or something like that, but I don't want to see anything more than 3 stories. We already have a height regulation in our plan, and I'd like to have that established just as they've done at Nordic Valley. So we've done this. I'd like that hotel pushed back at least 300 feet from Highway 166 or north of the canal. Now another thing too, building and housing. If there's any types of buildings along the road, I'd like it to be single-story, then go to 2-story, and then to 3-story. We talked about, and we've heard this a lot, but about building wealth so kids can come back up there or have a place to live, or first responders or school teachers or people who work in the service industry can afford a place. These units need to be owner-occupied. Absolutely no fractional ownership. Those create rentals that have to be owner-occupied. And so that's a big thing for me too, is to create owner-occupied units. That protects areas. Those would be my criteria that I would have to have, Madam Commissioner and Mr. Chair, in order to consider the next thing on there.
All right, Commissioner Bullock, you have comments on this?
The only comments I have are just that the MDA would be extensive for me, similar to the concerns you have, Commissioner Harvey.
So what you're suggesting, Commissioner Harvey, we would, your motion would be in order, would be to approve, subject to a development agreement putting in place between the county and the developer with all those requirements you just stated. Would that be correct? Or?
At minimum, where I'm at right there.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a clarifying question? When we're talking about buildings next to the street being 1 story, then 2, then 3, are we talking about the existing Highway 166 or the new streets that might be in the development?
I'm talking about 166.
You said 166.
Got it. And then the other thing I was going to mention is the applicant mentioned that they'd be more than happy to send someone up to talk to you guys about other items to negotiate if you guys want to talk to the applicant. They just offered that.
Well, a development agreement opens up discussion on a lot of issues that could come up over the next period of time. Is that correct?
That's right.
So,
and you'll have lots of opportunity to do that with them.
Okay. All right. Commissioner Harvey?
I think we had a hand up from the applicant.
Mr. Lewis, would you like to speak to that? Welcome, go ahead.
Good evening, Commissioners. Well, first of all, I want to thank you guys for your time tonight and all the consideration we've put into this. It's been a long journey. One thing I wanted to point out, just as a technicality, Commissioner Harvey, the goal, I think, of this would be not just primary, but long-term rentals. That's something else I think we need. Now, that's very different than short-term rentals, and we can certainly accommodate 75% loss of short-term rentals. That's not what this is going for. We're going for places where our kids can rent, our kids can own, employees can own, but not nightly. So that'd be the only nuance to that particular point you made. Everything else I'm fully in agreement with. And I also want to say too that, it's tough for me as a local of almost 30 years to hear people's fear about the unknown, and they're not sure what's coming and what is Eden Crossing and why haven't we heard more about it and why aren't you asking us to be involved, and It's very important to me, and it's been very obvious on all my projects, that I very much value community input in my projects. And, you know, when we had issues with Eagle Crest and I wanted to do storage units, the HOA there that I went to when we did that project didn't like that idea. And so, you know, it was lots of back and forth and compromise on both sides, and it was a win-win when we finished. But not when we started, but when we finished, everybody got something out of that, and everyone went away okay. You know, not super happy and lost, but they all got something. Same exact thing with Cobabe. They didn't want townhomes very close to their houses. So after a long, you know, talk, we moved them down the hill, and everyone signed off. Same thing at Legacy. They didn't want to do my rental cabins. Great. Well, what do you want to see? Tell me what does work. Let's work it out. So every one of my projects, that's what we do. And we haven't done that on Eden Crossing yet because Eden Crossing has not come to you guys yet. I haven't introduced that project. This is about street regulating and zoning to find out what we're allowed to do. Can I do a hotel? How close can it be? Is it tall? Is it short? Is it all those things? So what I want to emphasize mostly to the public is this is the very beginning of a very long process. And if we're lucky enough to get through this and have an approval tonight, besides being grateful, we will be committing to you guys, as we always do, to now next engage the community with lots and lots of public meetings with us before we come back and say, okay, what do you want to see? What works? What's reasonable? Some things we'll agree with, some things we won't agree with, but it'll be a process. It'll be a collaboration. And like the attorney here said, Zane, I really appreciate his kind words, and I would like to get all of us to a place where we can collaborate again and not just, no, you can't, and yes, you can. And you got to get past that too. Okay, if it's going to happen, let's have an input into how this goes. And I just want you to know from my side of things, we're open to that collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, I just want to make a couple of comments, Commissioner Harvey, before I go back to you. I learned a long time ago, sometimes the best ordinance or legislation is one that opposing parties both don't like. I think that some of those recommendations obviously are hard to swallow for the developer. They're hard to swallow for members of the public, but that may make it something that we look for in the future. I'd also emphasize that those people that talked about waterways, storm runoff, roads, all those, that will be addressed. That's not up for discussion or approval tonight. I'm going to quote from our good governor, Spencer Cox, that I spent quite a bit of time with over the last 2 years. He made the comment, and I fully believe, as he talks about housing and how we help our kids and grandkids to have some type of future with housing. Good infrastructure makes good development. I think we have an opportunity here to put density where there is the potential for infrastructure, i.e. water, sewer. We heard from Ogden City about the nitrate problem. It's time that we started recognizing that we can't continue to have septic tanks in Ogden Valley and not impact our neighbors to the west and impact a lot of our other neighbors. So with that, Commissioner Harvey, I would go back to you for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve that ordinance 2023-37 with the requirements that I asked for at whatever process those are entered into. And that's my motion.
So just to be clear, so that would be approved subject to a development agreement being approved at time certain.
That's the way the ordinance is currently written.
Right, okay. So that would be in the development agreement. So what we're doing is basically moving this forward to make sure everybody's clear on this, that if that development agreement is not agreed to by either party, by either us or the developer, this dies.
Right.
Is that your understanding?
Correct.
Is that correct?
That's right.
Charlie, from your standpoint?
That's how it's written.
All right. Is that your motion?
It is.
Are you clear on that motion, Charlie?
I am.
Clear. All right, I'm going to second that motion. Any other discussion? Commissioner Bolos?
Yes, actually. Did a lot of research on the general plan. I lost my notes. As expressed in my motion to adopt the new street regulating plan, I support this concept, and I think it fits the village area that it belongs in. One of the references in the general plan that was actually referred to in one of the public comments was regarding commercial development, and I'll read just a couple of excerpts. Limit all new commercial development in the Ogden Valley planning area to the village areas, which I believe this does. Avoid rezoning new property to commercial or manufacturing until such time that the community supports it. I believe this community is very close to supporting this, if not already, pending infrastructure. Future commercial or mixed-use rezoning should only be considered adjacent to existing commercial or mixed-use zoning in a manner that creates clusters and avoids strip commercial. My point is it talks about being considered adjacent to existing commercial.
Got it. Roll call vote, Craig.
Okay, roll call vote for ordinance 2023-37, Commissioner Bolos.
Nay.
Commissioner Harvey.
Aye.
Chair Ford.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Back to Commissioner comments. Commissioner Bolos, any comments?
Yeah, I appreciate you giving us the time. I know most people are not interested in this, but I made a few notes along the way over the last several weeks. I want to thank everyone who came tonight. It's been a long meeting. We appreciate your comments and your engagement. I also had numerous people reach out to me, and I appreciate those people. I tried to respond to everyone. I may have missed some, but had a full inbox. And it was a good mix, and that shows me that this community, I wouldn't call it divided, but I would call it passionate about their sides of this issue. And that's important. That's great when people care enough to express themselves. And it's great to know that they'll be heard. I didn't know if I would bring this up, but I'm going to. I've had a lot of respectful conversations with people, and I've had a lot of conversations that I've been disrespected, and it's difficult enough to make hard decisions without having to separate personal attacks and accusations from the facts that we're trying to consider. So those who have been respectful, I appreciate that. Some of you are here and have had email and other conversations with me. And there are some probably online who know I'm talking to them as well. I really appreciate the respect. A lot of gratitude for that. Despite accusations, I don't vote based on promises to support my reelection. I don't vote based on personal attacks by individuals, myself or others. I don't sell my votes for promises of what my future might hold. They're hard decisions, and I've spent hundreds of hours researching every point that I feel is important to this decision and have made the votes tonight in the way that I feel is best and most appropriate. And so thank you to those who have shown respect to not only me but my fellow commissioners. I really appreciate that, and that's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Harvey. Anything else? So everybody's left because they probably a little let down for the outcome. Let me just say, as a lifelong resident of Ogden Valley, better part of 70 years I've lived there, I've seen the Ogden Valley change over the past 70 years since I lived there, and change is going to come. Change is always somewhat difficult, but the valley that we see today is not the valley I grew up with in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. If we could go back, I would in a second. People ask me, stop growth. Okay, I'd like to know how to do that. We have in-migration, we have a lot of people with kids and grandkids. Stopping growth is not an option. But controlling growth and managing growth and looking at what we have in Ogden Valley is the proper path forward. I would urge those people in the audience that have been here tonight, take the opportunity not to be negative, to seize this opportunity to get involved, work with this developer, work with the county, tell us what you want to see up there. I think that they're fully open. Again, this is the beginning stage. Please be respectful to your neighbors. This is what I saw take place with this particular issue was not the valley I grew up in. I grew up in a valley where you talk to your neighbor, His cows got out, you helped him mend fences. You didn't attack your neighbor personally. That's not the Ogden Valley. That's not the Utah way. I hate to see that take place. I hate to see us take the path of what we're seeing on a national basis. Again, that's not good form. I would say this, commissioners, appreciate your attention to this. This has been an ongoing process. This is a delicate balance that we as county commissioners have to balance between future growth, private property rights, and what we see is the best outcome for preserving open space, giving the opportunity for those local farmers to preserve farms in Ogden Valley, which I happen to be one. And there's nothing more I would like to do than preserve open space, preserve farming. But if we're going to do that, we can't do that by burying our heads in the sand and just say everything's no. Growth is coming, whether we want to recognize that fact or not. It's here. In 10 years, believe me, if we don't start making decisions that decide where and what type of development we want to see, we'll see it, and you may not be happy with it, because it'll be forced on us by out-of-state developers. The state's taking an active interest in not only the counties, but what the cities do. Right now, we have the opportunity to have those decisions. If the answer continues to be no, that option will be taken away from us. I want you to understand that. As a former legislator, I know how that works down there. We have the opportunity now to direct what we want to see happen in Ogden Valley. I urge you to get involved, help make that decision in a positive way, not by attacking your friends, neighbors, and harassment. With that, Commissioners, I entertain a final motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. We're adjourned.